Hello, my viewers. So my nieuwe review UAP article just dropped today. And to my surprise, this is in Dutch. People from all over the world are throwing this thing through Google's Translate, and it's gaining a lot of traction online because of some new statements Mr. David Grusch did with me in the Q&A that I did with him for the article. In case you didn't know, I got to talk to David, and actually there is some new information that came out, so if you get the chance, try to read it. But right now I'm going to treat you to my journalistic journey on the interview Mr. Coulthard did with David on News Nation, and also what the debrief wrote about it. But I've been covering this for about 2 years. Spoke to Mr. Elizondo, spoke to Mr. Mellon, spoke to Reid, spoke to Avi Loeb, Mr. Paolo Guisardi, incredibly important key players in UAP disclosure, and of course my interview with David Grusch. So now I'm gonna edit all of these little hidden pearls I've had for the last 2 years, put them together, and you'll see there's a perfect timeline towards the disclosure we are witnessing today. So guys, enjoy. I'm not gonna talk too much. I just want you to see this. Ciao. Bye. The last couple of months, there's a slow drip of information about whatever the phenomenon is. I've noticed there's much more hinting towards extraterrestrial. Now, I know this is a question you probably don't want to answer or have to answer, but are we facing a revelation anytime soon that this is not earthly?
That's a great question, Max.
Bombshell claims from a military whistleblower. UFO wreckage recovered by the U.S. kept classified by a secret government program for decades.
So one of the most important phases of my journey was, of course, my trip to San Marino, where I got to talk to Lou Elizondo in person. And well, that trip and that interview turned out to be pretty prophetic, as you will see in a couple of minutes.
Said this before. The likelihood of this being, well, first of all, it's not U.S. tech. We know that. We've already admitted it. It's not. We admitted it to ourselves. We admitted it to the world. We're past that in the conversation. Every day that goes by, it is increasingly likely that this is not some sort of foreign technology. So the question is, at that point, then what is it, right?
Yeah.
We can speculate, but I think we need more data. All I have said for the record, and I still maintain that, is that it's not our technology, and it's becoming exceedingly unlikely that it's some sort of foreign technology. So the question is, and whose is it? Or what is it, right? And where is it from?
Yes.
These are the questions that we're asking here today. This is why we're in San Marino.
Yeah.
It's exactly for that reason. We need to start asking those hard questions. If it's not from here, then you know, we've got a lot of soul searching to do.
Tonight, for the first time, a former senior military intelligence officer comes forward to say what we've only imagined is true.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone.
Claims that our government has proof of alien life.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number. Some are landed, some are crashed.
Yeah, I do think this is why it's so important, because if it were to be true and it is not from here, not from Earth, then that means life as we know it is going to be different.
Yeah, and I don't think in a bad way, necessarily. I think it's, well, it's very much like here in San Marino. Imagine living your whole life inside a wall and one day realizing that there's a whole world outside the wall. What is it like the very first day that you walk outside? You've lived your entire life inside the beautiful walls, right? And all of a sudden you realize most of the world, most of the universe isn't in here. It's out there.
allegations of a secret government program that has hidden the truth, the technology, from the world.
There's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral, and it's totally frightening.
From Roswell to the present day.
We're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 miles from the west.
There are non-prosaic cases, 100% unexplainable.
So, by accident, I was there when Lou got the message in his phone that the NDAA report dropped and the secret agencies had to share everything you knew about UAP with Congress, and if not compromising Homeland Security, even with the general public. Yeah, I was there. So this is what happened. A very symbolic day. But today something is going to drop. You guys have a scoop. Mr. Elizondo, can you please elaborate on what just dropped in your iPhone?
Yes. So it appears that the new NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, not quite sure yet if this is the final draft language or if this is the real final version, appears to be about 5 pages. And what we'd like to do with you is to be the first to really discuss it with you. What you're about to hear is a direct result of your efforts to Congress. If you ever wanted proof that the little UAP community that did, here it is. So,
well, yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. I'll read the first paragraph. You read the second paragraph.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Establishment. This is from section 1652. Establishment of office to address unidentified aerial phenomenon. Guys, ready? You sitting down, you buckled up, you got your seatbelt, got a nice cocktail in your hand, because you deserve it. Subsection A, establishment. No later than 180 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, shall establish an office within the Office of the Secretary of Defense to carry out on a department-wide basis, wait for it.
1. The mission currently performed by the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force as of the date of the enactment of this act. B. Duties. The duties of the office established under subsection A shall include the following. Developing procedures to synchronize and standardize the collection, reporting, and analysis of incidents regarding unidentified aerial phenomena across the Department of Defense. Second, developing processes and procedures to ensure that such incidents from each military department are reported and incorporated in a centralized repository. Lou, please.
Yes.
Take over.
Establishing procedures to require the timely and consistent reporting of such incidents. Subsection 4. Evaluating links between unidentified aerial phenomena and adversarial foreign governments or the other foreign governments or non-state actors. Evaluating the threat that such incidents present to the United States. Coordinating with other departments and agencies of the federal government as appropriate. Coordinating with allies and partners of the United States as appropriate to better assess the nature and extent of unidentified aerial phenomenon. Whoa, wait a minute.
Yep.
That's big.
Yeah, I do think this is why it's so important, because if it were to be true and it is not from here, not from Earth, then that means life as we know it is going to be different.
Yeah, and I don't think in a bad way, necessarily. I think it's very much like here in San Marino. Imagine living your whole life inside a wall and one day realizing that there's a whole world outside the wall. What is it like the very first day that you walk outside? You've lived your entire life inside the beautiful walls, right? And all of a sudden you realize most of the world, most of the universe isn't in here. It's out there.
Yeah.
Right?
And do you believe that? Is it out there?
Well, I think we only have to do is look up and realize it is out there. 99.99% of our universe is beyond our direct observation or even comprehension. That's a fact.
For decades, the UFO question has been consigned to the realm of speculation, but in recent years, serious people have started taking the subject seriously.
You'll see it come through the top of the screen. There it goes.
Prompted in part by the release of these videos, purporting to show encounters between American naval aviators and what the Pentagon has labelled unidentified aerial or anomalous phenomena. Congress has convened hearings to determine what these UAP are and what threat they might pose.
If UAP do indeed represent a potential threat to our security, then the capabilities, systems, processes, and sources we use to observe, record, study, or analyze these phenomena need to be classified at appropriate levels.
The Department of Defense has established a special team, formerly known as the UAP Task Force, recently renamed the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARRO, to investigate and identify what are now hundreds of reported sightings. So far, they have not confirmed any of them to constitute proof of alien life. Officially, the government continues to state we are indeed alone. But now, for the first time, a former member of that official investigative team is speaking out, telling a stunning story that impacts every person on this planet. And now you're about to meet that man for the very first time in this exclusive television interview. Welcome. Have a seat. Maybe start off telling me your name and who you are.
My name is David Grusch.
One of the great things about the Gillibrand Amendment is that it requires continuing unclassified reports issued to the public. So if that amendment doesn't pass, there is no requirement, no demand on the executive branch to produce any more unclassified reports. The second thing is that there are already some people associated with the Galileo project who are exposed to classified information but don't share it like Lou and I. It's not relevant, it's not pertinent, they don't want it. And
Sure.
That is that I believe there's a lot of information in government channels not available to the public, which is either currently unclassified or could readily be declassified. And one of the things that we can do on that panel is help to be advocates for that and review that. Lou and I have both seen videos that are nearly identical in every way to the ones that have been released. They couldn't possibly damage national security, but they haven't been released. Right. And I think there's a considerable more data like that. We'd like to see more of that shared with the public and the scientific community.
Grusch says he's never personally seen non-human intelligence, but he's spoken to enough people directly involved in what he calls the program that he's convinced it's real.
I started out as a non-believer. I came to the problem as a hardcore physics guy, intel officer, so I have a, excuse my language, high factor. I was very methodical, interviewing people who didn't know each other, making sure this wasn't some kind of cover-up of some other program.
He says he pressed to gain direct access to this program, and that's when his trouble started. Grusch claims his investigation was stymied, his requests for access rebuffed.
They shut the door in my face. They denied me access to these programs.
Soon after, he says, he endured reprisals and retaliation from above. He then reported that information to the Intelligence Community Inspector General. That's why he's filed this whistleblower complaint. He says that experience is why he decided to go public here and in a recent article written by Leslie Kane in The Debrief.
Do you think there is Roswell debris in the hands of the United States government or from another incident before or after?
Well, as we've talked in our conversation this morning, I tried to find out and was turned down. Now, at the time, I wasn't the leader of the Senate. I was just an individual senator. And I think that withholding whatever information Lockheed has is not good for the country, if in fact they have any.
Yes, sir. Have you ever been briefed on a crash? Was this ever discussed before?
What I did when I read that letter from the Defense Intelligence Agency is I called that man. I didn't want him to come to my home, didn't want to go to his office, so I had him come to my home. And he was a PhD physicist. He was very logical. And basically what he said, I know where rockets are today. I know where they started. I know where they end up. So I understand rocketry well. But what I don't understand is these unidentified flying objects. And that's where we need to do more work. And I believe that he was right. I still believe he's right. And I think that we need to move along on this and do everything we can to continue the studies. There's interest has been stimulated. American people are curious. They want to know more. And I think that we should put all guns aboard and just move forward on this in any way we can. I think the government should spend more money than my ATIP money. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And American people deserve to know what we know and what we don't know.
Yeah, they're sophisticatedly engineered, certainly not by humans.
And while Grusch says the US has gleaned some insight from these materials for military use, so much more could be done if academia and the private sector had access.
It's totally nuts that humanity as a whole, especially the U.S. citizenry as a whole, they're not even benefiting from broad research on this to solve propulsion, energy issues, novel material science that can improve people's quality of life. It's just totally nuts how it's been protected and inhibits progress.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
Is this something that is important, that if we have knowledge on the phenomenon, we could back engineer it and possibly enhance our technology?
Absolutely, in my mind. I mean, we're seeing objects that are using some kind of propulsion system that we don't understand. It's not the kind of thing that we use to power virtually any other aircraft. It's not combustion engineering. They're not inhaling oxygen and mixing it with fuel and igniting it. There's no air intake on a lot of these things. There's no exhaust. There's no wings. There's a lot of novel, if not radical, perhaps unknown to us technology being involved there that could have all manner of extraordinary benefits if we're able to emulate it and understand it. So that's a ways off, but that is absolutely one of the potential long-term benefits.
For sure, for sure. Mr. Mellon, can I ask you, what was it that made you convinced that there's something penetrating our skies that shouldn't be there, or we just don't know what it is? Because when I talked to former Senator Reid, the first time he really took UAP seriously was when Mr. Bigelow sent him information. Now, he had already access to the Blue Book files, Grusch. What was it that made you convinced there's something to be investigated?
Well, two things really. I was participating as a consultant in some official meetings in the Pentagon when I became aware of the extraordinary number of incidents that were occurring off the East Coast. And when I pursued that and looked into it and actually talked to some of the Navy pilots personally, there was no question in my mind that this was going on. It was extensive. It had been going on for a long time, and nobody was doing anything about it. They weren't reporting it up the chain of command, much less trying to analyze it or understand it. So to me, that was a massive intelligence failure. It was totally unacceptable. It was lack of support for our people. And I was determined at that point to do whatever I could to try to correct the problem. As Dr. Loeb says, Avi said, it was kind of a case of the emperor's not wearing any clothes, and somebody's got to stand up and say, somebody's got to say that. So Lou and I were running around saying that all over, anywhere we could get an audience.
And at the centre of it all, the crash retrieval program the government has never publicly acknowledged. A program, Grusch says, that's included at least one private aerospace company that is storing alien craft. Is that true?
That is how a lot of these relationships are. While I don't want to name the specific companies and government elements, but overall, the government has been the custodian of a lot of this, right? And they'll hand receipt it out to a cleared defense contractor to do some analysis, which I find highly unethical. You have basically a sole source arrangement, and you allow certain private corporate elements to look at this, develop a potential insight, and then sell it back to the government for profit. And I think that's totally unethical.
There are some accounts of Lockheed Martin being in possession of extraterrestrial debris. I know you have in fact tried to, get into that information, and you were for some reason denied. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Do you know for a fact they have extraterrestrial debris?
I thought that if they had something there, I'd want to see it. And so I went through the hoops necessary to get clearance, and they wouldn't give it to me. Now, I'm not too sure that would be the same answer today. Maybe it would be. But I think we've made a lot of headway since that time of making sure that there's transparency in everything we do in government.
You're not being paid for this interview?
No, I'm not.
Why are you doing this?
It's a sense of service, Call me a Boy Scout or whatever. It just, when I saw the kind of wrongdoing I did, I don't want to be 60, 70 years old in the future and have that, coulda, shoulda, woulda kind of feeling where I could have made a difference. I do not want to live a life of regret.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
You've said that the United States has spacecraft, intact craft.
We do.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well, naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
Have you seen spacecraft?
I've seen some interesting photos and I've read some very interesting reports.
But, he says, the specific documents and photos that would prove his claims are still classified, and he cannot disclose them here.
So, about a month ago, my source called me, told me to come to The Hague, where he showed me those documents, and they look real to me. They look real to me. I cannot say too much about it. There were some official, let's say, logos, marks on that, signed by some very highly profiled people. I saw what I saw. I integrated that in my article. And if I go back in time, what I saw, I actually already knew. But now I just had the proof. I saw the proof. You be the judge.
Gave a few hints before, but Roswell may not have been the first event, and well known. I mean, there's been some reporting internationally as well that there have been some crashed vehicles, and they were obtained by local authorities. And there was some scientific study done on them. I want to be very careful not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I've seen personally some documentation that's very compelling from a particular foreign country where they had a recovery of a vehicle, and they had some countries conducting scientific analysis on it. And after World War II, allegedly, parts of that vehicle were brought to the United States. Italy.
Yeah, it was Italy.
Yeah, that's as it was explained to me. I saw some documentation. Look, I don't want to get too much into the conspiracy side of the house. There is some documentation that has been validated that was from Mussolini himself, and it's authentic. It's been proven to be authentic. The documentation.
So let's start from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You say it's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian secret services includes crude drawings of the UAPs. It's true, it's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. The Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945, and the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet?
Certainly.
We're talking about a 1933 UFO recovery in Italy. UFO recovery in Italy, I think it was. Now, I've asked you before, was it a crashed vehicle or was it something that was dug up, like an archaeological finding?
According to my knowledge, it was not dug up. Repeat, not. It was something that landed and or crash landed. This is a telegram. This telegram was sent by the news agency. The Stefani was the name, news agency, which was the only official news agency of the time, classified riservatissimo, which means confidential, and it has the highest priority, and it's dated June 13th of 1933 at 16 hours. So the text, which I have translated below, it says, by superior order, it is disposed to treat the news diffused with Stephanie's dispatch number 6631C of today as follows. Aircraft above recognized as Meteor, repeats Meteor, by the Brera Astronomical Observatory, which is was the most important observatory at the time, give minimum graphic relevance to the news, no need, repeat, no need to correct, minimize, immediate confirmation of receipt required, signed by the Director of Special Affairs.
Grusch alleges the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft for decades. He's filed a whistleblower complaint saying he gave what he calls the classified proof to Congress and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. NewsNation has confirmed David Grusch's credentials and resume. We've not seen or verified the alleged proof he says he's provided to investigators. He says he can't show us the proof for national security reasons. He also tells us he's not seen photos of the alleged craft himself, but has talked extensively with other intelligence officials who have.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to.
And by the way, this image shows the place, the location of the crash, of the landing. It's not far from Milan and not far from Varese, that you see here. So this is the general area where this aircraft would have landed or crashed landing. We don't know for sure.
Now, sir,
If I can interrupt for one more time. I've heard the vehicle was a silver disc, and that is that true?
I'm showing this image because this is that was a hangar, or one or more hangar, which were the property of the Society CI Marchetti, which was one of the top producer of aircraft at that time. And they said that this vehicle or what remained of this vehicle was conserved, was stored here in this facility.
Now, are we talking about like the Italian Area 51 or S4?
Well, you know what, 51 or X4 are specifically designated localities for this kind of activities. This was a facility where that was in the vicinity of the landing site that they used, which was on hand to store these debris or this craft, whatever it was.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
At one of the symposia in San Marino, in 2010 it was, we had this intervention by this gentleman named William Brophy. This gentleman from the US said that his father was an officer in the US Air Force, and that when he was in his duty had the possibility, it was shown the bodies kept under formalin of two aliens, of the classical Nordic aliens, so to speak. Bodies a bit damaged, but easily recognizable, I mean. And they were the classic kind of Nordic aliens. This is interesting, I mean, because this gentleman, Brophy, William Brophy, said that his father was also was told that these two bodies were confiscated in Italy, in northern Italy, at the end of the war by the US Army, which of course brought them to the US. So there are speculations indeed that Mussolini could have been induced to ally with Germany because he could have thought that these two aliens were indeed Germans. And that aircraft was that landed or crash landed in northern Italy was actually a Wunderwaffen, one of those special weapons that the Germans were secretly developing.
And I think that this is something that America must do because, as I've indicated, Putin was head of the KGB. He had 30,000 agents working for him. So we know that he's looking into all this stuff. We know that China's looking into this. We know that France is looking into this. And I think that we have to stay on top of it, as far as I'm concerned, with the United States government. You cannot let this go without continual evaluation of what's up.
No, there is no good way to level the playing field and hold other nation states accountable if they're doing unethical or illicit activity as it relates to this subject. And I think the obtuse secrecy is actually putting us in a very dangerous position where a country might make a breakthrough. Let's say it's an adversary of ours. And it is so destabilizing.
You say there's been a Cold War behind the scenes with Russia and China.
There has been a Cold War with our peer adversaries, yeah.
Why hasn't Russia or China come out and spoken publicly about this?
I think they're in a similar, pickle as us, where it's they understand maybe some of the socioeconomic destabilization factors in their own society.
But if this non-human intelligence is so advanced, and at least some of them are malevolent, why haven't they destroyed us already? Perhaps some fragile yet combustible détente has been reached. Grusch has written an internal document about his discoveries that refers to agreements that risk putting our future in jeopardy. And it's quite clear that you're talking about agreements between America and non-human intelligences. Have we made agreements with non-human intelligences?
That's the kind of information I really hope national leadership is able to get to the bottom of.
I need to pin you down on this. Are there agreements between non-human intelligences and the American government?
I think that's a question that I would like to know all the details of as well.
We do know of at least one agreement among humans that's worth noting. This 1971 agreement between the US and the USSR on measures to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Whether or not you believe Dave Grusch, this document proves the two superpowers were aware that UAP existed, whatever they were.
If you look at Article 3 of that treaty, it talks about unidentified objects near nuclear facilities or interfering with communications. And that is a treaty that has been used, from what I understand, to notify each other if there's a concerning event.
And that's a way of saying to the Russians, hey, don't shoot at us, it's not us.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a concern because of the secrecy. There is an environment where you could have almost like a false flag, where true non-prosaic UAP situation could be contrived as a provocation of something from a nation state, and we want to de-escalate that.
If this is true, if the stakes are so high, if the fate of the human race is at stake, perhaps it's no surprise to hear Grusch say the US government will do anything to keep these secrets safe.
So some of David's statements actually brought me back to an interview I did a while ago with a man named Mr. Robert Salas, who was responsible for some nuclear rockets at Malmstrom Air Base, I think it was Montana, where he was in charge of some nukes, and a UAP appeared and started messing with his nuclear weapons. So, yeah, this actually pretty much fits into the whole narrative too. So here's the little bit with Mr. Robert Salas. And, well, turns out that might be true too.
So take me through that moment. You got a call. And this was your guy on the ground, right? Who was outside with the silos. Just walk me through this. What happened?
Yeah, well, actually, our crew of two of us officers were underground, about 60 feet underground, in a concrete capsule. We were locked in with a huge door. Very secure. We had 6 guards upstairs, security guards, who were monitoring the site and would also go out and respond to security violations at the launch facilities where the missiles are actually located, about a mile or so away from this launch control center, this hub. So the first thing, I was in command at the time because my commander was taking a rest break. We alternated because one of us had to be awake at all times. First thing happened, I get a call sometime in the night, evening. I don't remember exactly when, but the main security guard upstairs said there were strange lights flying above the facility. And this facility, by the way, is a fenced area, located in the middle of a wheat field in central Montana. But he said that there were strange lights flying very fast, stopping in midair, reversing course. There was no engine noise. They would do very strange maneuvers, and he said emphatically they're not airplanes. Now, I even said, what do you mean, like UFOs? And he said, well, sir, I can't explain it, but they are not airplanes. They're not aircraft that I know of. And so,
Did he give a description on how they looked? Or
he simply said they were lights in the sky. So I basically hung up the phone. I didn't take much interest in that call because I thought, well, they're not supposed to, but maybe he was just pulling my leg or just joking around. So I didn't pay much attention. And then a few minutes later, he calls back, and this time he's screaming into the phone, very frightened. I remember he was yelling, screaming, shouting. I couldn't make sense of what he was trying to say. And then finally calmed him down. He said, there's a orange, red light pulsating and hovering above the front gate of the facility. So, and he wanted me to tell him what to do next. He had all the guards out there with their weapons. And he was very frightened, very frightened. So I knew, or I felt that there was some kind of an attack going on. I didn't know exactly what, because he was sounded so irrational, but I told him to make sure nothing comes in the front gate, use force if necessary, but that's about all I could think of at the time. It was a very shocking and critical situation. So,
what went through your mind? Did you feel like going outside and see it for yourself?
Well, I could not. I was 60 feet underground. I was locked in. We had no authority to open that door until we were relieved by another crew, because it could have exposed our missiles to some sort of takeover.
Yeah.
So we couldn't open that door and go up topside. He hung up the phone. One of his guards was injured, he said, and he hung up the phone. I looked over at my board, display board, which showed the status of the missiles. They were all green, ready to go, launchable. Then I walked over to my commander, who was taking a rest break, started to tell him about the phone calls, and then all the missiles started shutting down. We got red lights instead of green lights across the board.
Now, you were 27 years old at the time, right?
Right.
Okay. That must have freaked you out.
Actually, I was 26. But anyway, yeah, it freaked me out. I was shocked. I was basically shocked, especially to see those missiles go red while this object was still up there.
I'll leave you with one thing. We have scientists here today. And of course you hear, UFOs, UAPs is a crazy hypothesis. But let me ask you this. Doesn't everything in science, every major advancement in science and understanding start with one crazy hypothesis that turns out to be right?
Yes. Yes. Galileo.
That's right.
Yeah.
Among the many others, right?
Yeah.
They come up with this crazy hypothesis. You're crazy, you're wasting time, you're not even a scientist. Turns out, wait a minute, it's a paradigm changing moment, right?
Yeah.
And so these are moments in time where humanity is forced to grow, and either it's like a crab molting its skin. Either you grow out of your shell, or you stay trapped in the one you're in.
Yes.
And if you stay trapped, you choose to stay trapped the one you're in, you're never going to grow. You're going to remain that size forever. So we have a choice, and that is to break out of the shell that we're in and grow as a species in our understanding, or stay in the shell.
are using some kind of propulsion system that we don't understand. It's not the kind of thing that we use to power virtually any other aircraft. It's not combustion engineering. They're not inhaling oxygen and mixing it with fuel and igniting it. There's no air intake on a lot of these things. There's no exhaust. There's no wings. There's a lot of novel, if not radical, perhaps unknown to us technology being involved there that could have all manner of extraordinary benefits if we're able to emulate it and understand it. So that's a ways off, but that is absolutely one of the potential long-term benefits.
For sure, for sure. Mr. Mellon, can I ask you, what was it that made you convinced that there's something penetrating our skies that shouldn't be there, or we just don't know what it is? Because when I talked to former Senator Reid, the first time he really took UAP seriously was when Mr. Bigelow sent him information. Now, he had already access to the Blue Book files, Grusch. What was it that made you convinced there's something to be investigated?
Well, two things really. I was participating in as a consultant in some official meetings in the Pentagon when I became aware of the extraordinary number of incidents that were occurring off the East Coast. And when I pursued that and looked into it and actually talked to some of the Navy pilots personally, there was no question in my mind that this was going on. It was extensive. It had been going on for a long time, and nobody was doing anything about it. They weren't reporting it up the chain of command, much less trying to analyze it or understand it. So to me, that was a massive intelligence failure. It was totally unacceptable. It was lack of support for our people. And I was determined at that point to do whatever I could to try to correct the problem. As Dr. Loeb says, Avi said, it was kind of a case of the emperor's not wearing any clothes. And somebody's got to stand up and say, somebody's got to say that. So Lou and I were running around saying that all over, anywhere we could get an audience.
Right.
The resistance to this disclosure from humankind, because human beings have a reflex, right? And the reflex is whatever I don't know is threatening or scary, or it messes with my axioms, whatever my life was like. Now, I don't want it to
Max,
change.
you're absolutely right. Let me give you a case in point. 2 months ago, I was told I had cancer.
Yeah.
Okay, now it looks like I don't, but you know what my very first reaction was when the doctor came in and said, we need to talk, you have a mass on your kidney? It was, I don't believe it. Instinctually, I told myself, no way.
Denial.
Right? Denial.
Yeah.
And then came, what does this mean to me? And how do I reconcile this with everything else that I know to be true? Well, I feel fine. Well, I look okay. This can't be true, right? No, I'm not. Right? So that is a natural human reaction. I just went through that very same thing a couple months ago.
Yeah, but you went through the process of accepting death.
Well, I think when it comes to the UAP topic, we're just now having this conversation. We're just now being told something that is changing our paradigm.
Yeah.
And so our initial gut reaction is, oh, no way, I can't believe it, right? It's going to take time.
Yeah, so I think the symbolism here is very powerful, because death is also, I don't know what happens after.
Great point.
Yeah.
That's right.
So disclosure,
uncertainty, right?
Yes.
The big unknown.
Am I going to heaven, or am I just worm food?
Right. And if, by the way, it turns out that there are things called UAPs and UFOs, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
What does that mean for the way I was raised and everything I was taught, right? Is all this no longer relevant, or is it maybe even more precious, right?
Are we afraid of maybe, in a way, dying a dying species, or moving forward to being evolved species?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we? You answer me.
Well, man, I don't know. I think I'm probably more like one of these stones in this big wall here. There's a lot of stones here that created the apartment up there. I think we're probably just one of these stones on our way up, hopefully. and not on our way down.
Yeah.
Right? Hopefully the stairs are going up and not down.
The unknown. We're going to the unknown.
There ever been an effort or have you ever tried to combine that information and maybe even now use, because my feeling is this, everything that's still classified cannot be shared with science yet. But if, like, for example, what Ms. Gillibrand is doing, and you can pile up all this information onto one centralized system, it would be so much more easy, I guess, for the science to compare whatever is at hand and work with. Now, is this something you or Ms. Gillibrand are lobbying for?
Well, absolutely. That's part of the intent of her amendment to help overcome what you refer to as these different stovepipes. It's a huge problem. When 9/11 occurred in the aftermath and that was analyzed, one of the conclusions was if FBI and CIA had been sharing information, they might have been able to prevent that tragedy, right? And so this is a very similar situation, only it's more extensive and worse because there are many more agencies that have relevant information, not just CIA and FBI. So it's crucial from the government national security standpoint, at least, to start bringing the puzzle pieces and putting them in one room on one table and putting them together. And the more of that information we can share with the scientific community as well, the better.
Max, I stopped you before when you asked Chris about last week. Maybe you want to get into that.
Mr. Mellon?
Well, the Lou and I were in DC most of the week in support of the Gillibrand Amendment and speaking with, consulting with different people on the Hill and in the executive branch and trying to do whatever we could to be of assistance. And we had a good, meaningful time down there, and we're tentatively optimistic.
Well, that's great. I had the feeling when I saw Ms. Gillibrand's speech a couple of weeks ago that she had been extended some more information than, let's say, usual, that might have convinced her a bit more to push this. Could that be true by any chance, Mr. Mellon?
She has some very good staff people.
By the way, she said that she will get a T-shirt from her children of the best mom of the year, and because they are very curious about the extraterrestrials, and I would like to suggest that we will also send her a T-shirt with the Galileo Project logo.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Loeb. That is a very promising statement for the best mom of the year.
A national security component to this. So that is kind of what got the members really to engage when they met with these Navy pilots and they looked them in the eye, and those airmen told them what their experiences had been. I would say that's in terms of effect on the members and getting them to engage. You notice Bill Nelson, the director of NASA, has been talking about that. That's because he was a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee when we pushed to get those pilots in there and have those briefings. And just, by good luck, he is now the director of NASA, and it's obviously had a huge effect on his thinking. So I think everybody's efforts to advance the conversation and get the information out are helpful and contribute and positive, and I support all that. But in terms of the actual impact on the legislators, I think first and foremost, it's been the Navy and the military and the national security argument.
Well, yeah, Mr. Mellon, to elaborate on Bill Nelson, he has actually stated, this could be extraterrestrial.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. He's got an open mind. It's wonderful. We need more of that. I think, of course, it could be extraterrestrial. I've written about that. I've written about the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I think if you look at the unclassified report that was presented from the intelligence community, that hypothesis fits the data better than any other hypothesis that I'm aware of. But, that's not proof of anything. Sure. That's informed speculation. And so what really counts is ultimately is getting the data and that scientists can use and to really find out for certain rather than just be speculating about what's going on.
But you know what it is? It's not death, it's a metamorphosis.
Yes.
Right? It is a caterpillar becoming a butterfly.
Yes.
And during that time it's in the cocoon, there's lots of uncertainty. But in order to build up, you must first break down.
Yep.
And that is the way Mother Nature is.
And also, now I found out you're Jewish. Jews don't really. No, Jews don't claim there is an afterlife because we don't know,
right.
So we don't disqualify it. But one thing is for certain in Judaism, and that is that energy never goes.
That's right.
Yeah, it never dies.
That's right.
So whatever.
It's, by the way, proven by science, right? Cannot be created nor destroyed.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. This is something else, man. It's I think, the transformative process of mankind is inevitable. I think it's time we have the conversation as a species, wherever that conversation takes us.
Right.
Right. I don't know where it's going to lead. I really don't. You have this great big master plan? No, I don't.
No.
I don't know how to tell you. Surprise. I mean, I don't know where this path leads. I just know that the path there leads to nowhere. It's a brick wall.
Right.
Because we are now faced with the fact that there are things that aren't ours. We don't know how they work. We don't know where they're from. We don't know who's behind the wheel. We don't know their intentions, whatever it is, right? We don't know where it's from. So at least let's ask the question, because by us not asking the question doesn't change the calculus at all.
Yeah, dare to ask the question.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, might as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.